Welcome back to Maldo's Magic. Tonight I have the honor and privilege of bringing on the show Rolando Ramos.
Hey, how you doing?
How's it going, brother? How are you?
Everything's great. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on Maldo's Magic. We've had some conversations in the past. I know we're in several different groups together, and I just really wanted to have an episode where we explain the four worlds of Kabbalah and how it relates to our life in the modern times. So I know that you are a Kabbalist for many years, right? What is it, over 20 years? So I would
Oh
like
yeah,
to
yeah.
turn the floor over to you to give a brief or an introduction so the viewers know who you are. You could mention any groups you're a part of, how long you've been studying Kabbalah. So the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, Maldo's magic. I really appreciate the sentiment, man. I've been watching what you've been doing for a minute, learning a lot. But and like I learned a lot from just spending time with you in in rooms. What's going on is that when we end up meeting up, we meet in these situations where they're very much elevated vibrations, and so we never had a chance to talk. And this is something I've been looking forward to. And thanks for asking about where I came from because we ended up meeting in these different rooms over and over
Yeah.
again. And well, the source is really easy. I was born into a Rosicrucian household where my father was an active Rosicrucian and participated in Martinism, and my mother was a just Christian, good Catholic. So in this dynamic growing up, I was introduced to these kind of philosophies that said you can do anything you set your mind to. You see that mountain over there, you can move that mountain. This kind of invigorating thinking was wonderfully, it helped me really be fearless as a child growing up, and that was wonderful. And my father had his meditative days and of quiet contemplation, and he would often go to lodge, and sometimes, I'd wait outside as a kid. So this was an introduction to my own practice, where after he got me involved in the when I was a kid. Uh, Listen to this. I ended up going to college, and in college I had a damn good time, and I joined two fraternities at the same time. One, I got tattooed on my back, and the other one, I think I think I would have been better off spending more time with this one rather than the one I got tattooed on my back. Because when I was looking for fraternity, this is what I was looking for. These discussions, this level of camaraderie. This is the real fraternity. And Kabbalah was the undercurrent of all the languages of all these different groups that we meet with, we talk about. The undercurrent, the thing that carries all this literature that we study, is Kabbalah. It's really funny, but that's what my father introduced me to. But our discussions would continue for years, and I would be developing my own ideas of spiritual development based on what I had studied as a kid, and then I soon after what got me into Kabbalah was I got in trouble. I got in trouble when I was like right at the cusp of being an adult.
Oh, wow.
And those kind of interactions where you learn that you have to straighten up, they leave an indelible mark, and they require of you to really step up and to determine what your path is going to be. And it was at a point where I was given a choice. It's like, look, you really need to think about who you are and what your role in life is going to be. And in order to do that, forget about everything else and study the Kabbalah. And, from then on, the discourse had changed my life. But what's interesting is the more serious I took my studies, the the less chaos I would find in my life. And the Four Worlds really talks to that, or starts that really interesting discussion, because it's a little quantum, it's a little woo, it's a little beautiful, but it's definitely poetic and paradoxical. So my
Wow.
path, yeah, I know, right? But like that's why I'm so excited to talk to you. Now we have this idea of Kabbalah in my life from then on. Here now, Through that path, this is important. I did join into a number of organizations when I started to get more important, like the Kabbalah Center in New York. That was really a big home for me. I love everything I learned from there. Really, it's fantastic as far as like an introduction go. But the one thing that I remember from that, they didn't necessarily, emphasize enough, that I would highly encourage anybody in this specific audience who wants to dive into this kind of modality. I wish they would have told me to learn Hebrew. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, I know.
Wait, so they didn't tell you to learn Hebrew, the Kabbalah Center? Really?
Well, think about it. I mean,
Wow.
it's not necessarily incumbent upon them to encourage people who aren't Jewish. Like, I'm not Jewish. That's important.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
this journey here has been one of learning to. You see, there's this beautiful parable, and I want to express it to you, that there's a soup spoon, and there's the soup, and it goes into the soup, and it goes into the soup, and it feeds us. But does the spoon ever taste the soup? The more I learn that the words and the studies of these worlds,
Hmm.
they don't exist independent of learning Judaism and the undercurrent of these
Okay.
ideas, philosophies. So that's where my journey in life is now, is that I've been attending a synagogue recently, just to go and sit down and read the text. And you'll find that these texts that they read in the synagogue are ones that many of the groups that we know about are rooted in the repetition in the
Hmm.
synagogue. When we see these over time, we start to understand the combination of how the spiritual stories in the Torah and the letters in them relate to what we're studying here in Kabbalah. So there's much more to tell, really, but it should serve to say that when you and I started getting to know each other,
Yep.
that's when my I was more like Moses in the spiritual parable, where
Mm.
I was leading my cells, all of my independent individual cells, on this journey to the sea, where I was all the way up to my nose. And then the seas parted, and I met you and the wonderful communities around us that really helped to bring this conversation to a new level.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's excellent. Thank you for that introduction.
of course.
So I want to get to it. So what I like to do on my podcast too is have really, some questions that can keep our conversation on point, that could help, the viewers to understand. Because a lot of times this stuff could seem, obviously it's like a whole different language, right? It could seem like hieroglyphics. And that's why I feel like, you know, traditional Kabbalah with a K, and I will interchange that. There's Kabbalah with a K, there's Kabbalah with a Q, and Kabbalah with a C. You have to be 40 years old to study it. They don't let you study it under 40,
I
right? Because
won't.
they think that you need to not think at that time in your life you have everything down. I mean, as far as like your job, your vocation, you're more mature. And from what my understanding is, right? So it's interesting. So let me jump into the first question, and then I'll let you remark with an answer, unless you have something before.
I have something to say about that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Because I've seen this and I've heard this repeatedly for years.
Right.
And there's a simple reason as to why. There's a couple things. One is that a little power can
Hmm.
be dangerous. You know, there's one big concept in Kabbalah called the power of intention,
Okay.
of intention and certainty, having certainty. But if one wields certainty like a sword, and they wield their ego in the other hand,
Hmm.
there seems to be a lot of chaos created in the realm of activating that certainty that Kabbalah talks about.
Okay.
When we reach a realm of being able to activate certainty, it's when we have this certain amount of gravitas in our life that we value the experience and opportunity in every breath. That is the missing component that youth can never grasp. And so, but the thing is, now we're in a totally different dynamic because all the information is right there at our fingertips. But it's up to us to ignore the radios, the big radio station of the ego, to
Hmm.
reach out and pluck the information and meditate on it. So this idea of 40 years old, kind of bupkis, brother. It's
Really?
this is old ideas because remember it was guarded for years. But the
Yes.
thing is that we find ourselves in a lot of these mystery schools talk about these periods of great end of kayugas, end of big cycles.
Okay.
And so we see here now that we're coming to an end of a cycle. We're involved in that whole thing, and different kind of mindsets start to come into play, right? We don't have time anymore to really worry about making sure they're old enough because we're so tied into each other on a cosmic level, brother,
Okay.
that the 100 monkeys idea that if I'm on one island and like all the monkeys do something on another island 20, 30 miles away, the monkeys will start doing the same thing because we're all connected more
Yep.
than we ever were through mediums just like this. So with that, I just want to say, what's your first question?
Excellent. Okay, so c- can you give a brief overview of the four worlds in Kabbalah, namely Atziluth, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya?
Yes. Yeah. First, wow. I'm like, yeah, sure, easy. But at the same time, when we're talking about Kabbalah, the first thing you said was that it's just not easy. It's layers of complication.
And try to see if you could, I know it's not a simple thing, but try to see if you could simplify think of the viewers as beginners.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, we do have four worlds. And, if you have an image on the screen, you can see the Kabbalistic tree of life, right? So if we're looking at what we recognize the Kabbalistic tree of life, we have the topmost point, right? And the southernmost point. Now, they go straight up and down for a reason. And what the four worlds does is it connects the ideas between the highest of Atziluth to the lowest, which is,
Okay.
yeah, which is Asiya. So we have four worlds. The good way to remember everything is that the top one and the bottom one both start with an A. Okay?
Yes, yeah, yep.
Yeah, because
Wow.
there's going to be so many different words when it comes to Kabbalah that we have to keep the mnemonics going frequently. And then once we hopscotch and lily pad through ideas, the beauty in the carousel starts to come together. Now, so we have the top and the bottom, Atzilus and Atziya, right? This is the idea of, you ever have like a eureka moment when you're meditating and you just got to write it down?
Yes.
You have just touched Atziluth. That moment where you're like, oh gosh, Joe, something like that. Like I gotta reach out to Joe, like whatever. That moment of just that realization that you've touched something special. That's it. It's just that simple. But a lot of us need to declutter the vibrations around our emotions
Okay.
because our heart receives the vibrations. And when we work in this dynamic of the four worlds, we have to realize that we're not incarnate. We're not incarnate. We started here. This world of Atziluth is that world of emanation. It's barely the world of archetypes. Okay? And on the Kabbalistic tree of life, it very much coincides with the Sephirot of Keter. Keter means crown. And when we think of Keter there, I want you to think of water flowing, a river flowing, and it looks so flow. It doesn't even look like it's moving. But underneath, there's a rock, and it's pushing the waves just over, just a little bit. That's the idea of Atziluth coming up to split and to create an opportunity for the experiencer of consciousness to come. So I know it's a long way to say Atziluth is that moment of epiphanies, the moment of connection with everything you never experienced. But it relates here to Asiya, which is the bottom of it. Asiya is this. It's this. And it's the end result of the first three worlds, Atziluth, Beria, and Yetzirah. Okay? Atziluth is the world of emanations. It's the idea of something foundational with Kabbalah in order to really understand this. First, is that in Kabbalah there's a saying that the world that we know, all this that we just talked
Hmm.
about, Asiya, is a 1% existence of a much larger 99% spiritual universe.
Wow.
So when we talk about Asiya, we're talking about the periphery of a shadow, right? It's
Okay.
that thin. And so when from Asiya, that emanation that we just plucked out from the thing enters into next step down, which is Beria.
Hmm.
Now that is definitely the world of for we start to create ideas here. Archetypes. Archetypes are where this is born here. Okay?
Hmm.
Now it's called the world of creation for that specific reason. The idea of a chair, right?
Yep.
It came from the fact that somebody didn't want to sit on the floor. But first, they had to have the idea that I don't want to have to get up from the floor. So they meditated on it. And they brought down this idea to Beria of like, well, I can go down so far. I need to do something so where I can meet myself. Well, what happens after you have the idea to create something that won't let you sit on the floor, but is
Hmm.
live? I think I can make a word for it. I think I'll call it a chair. Well, what's the next thing to do? If you have the idea for the chair, what do we do next? We have to figure out how to put things together and components so my old bony butt doesn't have to get up off the ground anymore. So I go now from Beria to the world of formation, where I am now forming that chair, right?
Okay.
But instead of a chair and components of a chair that I will bring down to, Asiya and sit upon, we're bringing down ideas. We're bringing down realities. We're bringing down vibrations. We're bringing down everything that has composed this world right now that we live in. And so it's very much an oversimplification,
Yeah.
but it's a term of art. And when I say the word art, I mean that both in a legal term and also a spiritual term. Because when I have a new thing that I developed, I create a patent for it, right? You
Yep.
know what a patent is, right? A patent is a new take on an old thing. Like you have your phone. It's not just a phone, it's a
Mm.
new kind of phone.
Okay.
Right. Now remember this. The difference between new technology and old technology is the difference in the art.
Okay.
Right. And that is the legal term. And the same thing applies to the spiritual term here.
Oh, wow.
The way that we address the spiritual world has to be very specific because the term of art that what we bring down really determines the outcome of what we bring down. Think about it this way. Somebody who wants to provide for their family is a very normal thing.
Yeah.
But when we reach up to Beria and we ask for that kind of guidance, some of us get a really good job. Some of us go and rob a bank. Both of them led to the same result of providing for our family, but in drastically different ways.
Okay.
And how does that harken back to the four worlds and Judaism? There's a holiday called Purim. Purim is very similar to Halloween because we all get dressed up. But why do we get dressed up for Purim? And well, that's important. We get dressed up. The other thing is drink a lot. Why would people drink a lot and get dressed up in different clothing? The point of Purim is now I'm going past all the legend and just get to the point of it. The point is to love the other person so much so that you forget about any of the baggage that existed and you just go right to the source, of their highest soul and you love that. So now we can start to see how all of Judaism is kind of rooted in this idea of seeing past to the individual and connecting with the highest versions of what we're working with. And that's a good way of introducing these four worlds. I know it's a lot.
Okay. Great. Excellent. So let's move along here. But excellent explanation. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
I love how passionate you are with it, and how you connected to Judaism as well, which it should be. And not everyone, not a lot of occultists or esotericists or Kabbalists with a Q really do that, right? We're more geared to more of the Western, like with alchemy and all the other stuff, tarot. But we'll save that for future questions. So moving along here, um, how do the four worlds relate to our everyday experiences and personal growth, in your opinion?
Okay. Okay. So every, personal growth and everyday opinion. Well, okay. First of all, like we had to prepare for these interactions here. Like every time that you interview somebody, you have to prepare to speak on those topics. That simple idea of like taking all those nebulous concepts and bringing them down to deliverable content here is a simple example of how you can take the nebulous ideas, that encompass, Beria and Atzilut, those passions, but you start to bring them down into, the world of formation, Yetzirak, and now you have to construct the interview. And by constructing it, you start asking yourself these different questions. So that's one idea of bringing it down. But like all systems, it works opposite wise. Let's say that, oh my gosh, I am so tied up in like something simple. Like I can't get over I can't get over this specific thing that I have to write. Like it's just like jamming my mind. I can't figure it out. What do I do? Well, you're locked up in this moment where you're trying to do something physical. That's where you're locked up in Atziluth. Back up, go within.
Okay.
Consult the highest version of yourself that has already possibly written this. You know, get the divination. That simple illustration tells you how you can, like if you're too much in the clouds, you're thinking about everything and you know that you have work to do. Well, then you have to get your head out of Beria and you have to get it back into Asiya.
Okay. All right.
Right. So already we see how there's so many different ways to work with it. And that's illustrative of something here. But I just wanted to point out one more thing. I've lived a beautiful life so full of experiences that have to do with Judaism and Kabbalah.
Okay.
You asked me how this can be applied in everyday life.
Yeah.
One thing that I had the pleasure of doing, the privilege, was I went to Israel in 2013, and I davened at the Western Wall, and I was able to go over the wall into the area of the olive grove, right?
Oh, wow.
And I meditated there. And what's funny is that I didn't catch a vibe at that moment. So I did what anyone would do. I went to the bathroom. There's a point to this, I know. When I got out of the bathroom,
Yeah.
and I was washing my hands, I realized that the wall just here to my left, on the other side was the Western Wall where I was just davening, and I was wearing a tefillin, and I'm bawling my eyes out, and at the same time, I was just meditating in this place, the holiest of holies that people try to get to.
Wow.
And they're crying on the other side because they cannot access it. And I didn't vibe with it, but at the same time, I was vibing with it before. What matters is that where our consciousness lies at any one moment allows us to tap into the next place. What we have here with the four worlds is a map that will kind of allow us to go and analyze where we are in any specific place. Now, I say all this because this is just one tool. This is very specifically entwined with the Kabbalistic tree of life.
Okay.
Which is this whole other dynamic, which introduces us to how we can really work with this. In fact, before we go into that topic, I think you have a lot of really good questions, and some of the upcoming questions might actually tie into it. So I think the last one you asked me was about practicality in everyday life and applying it. Well, I think I gave you a couple really good examples on that. So I think I'm ready for the next question is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because like you've been mentioned the tree of life, and it's the four worlds. Each world has its own tree of life.
I know. And the thing is you really want to
Not to get too deep. It's hard not to get deep with with Kabbalah, right?
That's actually my point, Maldo. Thank you for saying it. It's really easy to get in the weeds, and
Yeah.
I love the weeds. We exist
I
in the
know. I
weeds.
know. Yeah, I know. I'm the
But for
same
the
way.
sake, and the thing is that I love the community and generating community that loves to talk about this, because at its core, these are psychological tools, to that help us meditate and question ourselves and our role in the world, which ultimately lead to a more like authentic life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let me go to the next question here. So basically, um, how do emotions and thoughts correspond to the world of Yetzirah, right? And how can we work with them consciously?
Well, Yetzirah is a very specific world. So when we're talking about Yetzirah, we're
Yeah.
talking, it's the world just above, Asiya, which is
Yep.
this is the world of Asiya, this whole world.
Yeah.
But in the world of formation, we want to talk about those ideas of emotions. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about specific texts. Okay, when we talk about the world of Yetzirah,
Hmm.
if you're a studier of the
Yeah.
Rosicrucian order, of any kind of Rosicrucian studies, you had to have understood the core text for that is what? The Sefer Yetzirah.
Yetzirah. Yes.
Yeah, the Sefer Yetzirah is the first place where, we start talking about what the individual letters mean, the vibrations behind them. And think about it this way.
Hmm.
This is the culmination of studies that's really held root and carried this tradition for millennia.
Yeah.
But it had to come from somewhere. That means all the other, ideas before that led us to that place were consolidated and amalgamated into this text right here. My point is this: we study these letters because they've been studying it for so much longer.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
that groove, that psychic groove of connection with each of the Hebrew letters and the vibrations associated, dating back to the 1200s, which is when the Sefer Yetzirah, first came
Yeah.
up. We're talking about some serious devotion that has, like, a field that's been plowed for us to
Yes.
plant our own psychic interpretations. And it allows us a reservoir with which to pull emotional communications out of it. It's beautiful. But that's all this that I just said, Maldo, is a prelude
Mm.
to the fact that in the Sefer Yetzirah and the text therein, each letter they go over the vibrational significance. But you said emotional. What
Yes.
can we do to regulate our emotional status using the world of Yetzirah?
Hmm.
Okay, I speak a lot. I speak a couple different languages, but I still get stuck on the Hebrew words sometimes.
It's okay.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it. But in the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation, they have three mother letters, and those are Aleph, Mem, and Shin, and they represent the three elements, right?
Yep.
And so around that's three of 22 letters, right?
Hmm. Yes.
So you add seven letters. All of a sudden we have the seven letters are called the double letters. Now, when we think of these double letters, what does it mean that they're double letters? Well, that means that they have dual interpretations. That means there's a positive interpretation of the word and also a negative interpretation of that letter,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
So already the duality exists that when you want to equalize or regulate your emotional vibrational pattern using Yetzirah, what you do is you focus on the letter that corresponds to you meditate on the letter and what that letter means. And if you're feeling the lower vibration, you meditate on the higher one. Or if you're feeling too way out of whack, you can emotionally regulate it. Like if you just won a victory and you want to seek emotional regulation,
Yeah.
you zoom in on something more, like I do this, for the benefit of others, diffuse it. And this idea of each one of these double letters, it's almost like as a musician,
Hmm.
I see it as an EQ, a
Okay.
visible EQ, right? And everything that we do, everything that the Zohar talks about, harkens back to this idea of quantum physics, where we're collapsing a spiritual wave function. What does that mean, right? When we have emotional, when we're unregulated emotionally, we
Hmm.
have fantastic highs and drastic lows. And in Kabbalah, what we learn is that through emotional regulation, through vibration, we get to equalize that, to collapse those crazy highs and those so lows into something that resembles more of peace.
Okay.
And in that world of formation actually has to do very much right here with the world that is called the Zerampin. The Zerampin means the small face.
Okay.
The small face corresponds to these
Is that
specific.
the Ruach? The Ruach?
Oh no! Right now we're talking about the Kabbalistic tree of life and the specific sephirot that fit into something
Got
called
it.
the Zerampin.
Okay.
The Zerampin, Zeir and Pin, Anpin. I'm sure you could find a different spelling for it, but the
Yeah.
Zerampin is called the small face. And the small face corresponds to this area that is the Yetzirach.
I
Okay?
see. Okay.
This
Okay.
area mostly also, well, it does correspond with the seven planets of the solar system.
Oh. Okay.
Those seven planetary energies now, we start to see the start of like a beautiful way of synthesizing a little bit of emotional clarity. Why? Because the more we collapse that wave function and regulate our emotions, it allows us to connect easier with divinity because we're not obfuscated by any kind of emotional things that are not clear emotionally.
Okay.
You see? That's why one of the beautiful things about the Kabbalistic tree of life is the sphere of chesed. The sphere of chesed, if you could put this on the screen, if it's possible, at another time.
Yeah. I'll definitely put once we edit, I'll put it on. But I'm looking at the Tree of Life right now. But once we edit, I'll put it on for reference.
Okay, so I'll start right now. I want to draw our attention now to the sphere of chesed.
Okay.
Now, chesed is like a great reservoir. A reservoir, when we think of a reservoir, we think of a reservoir of water. And from that reservoir, we get our drinking water, our bathing water, cleaning water, all these things. Chesed is a spiritual repository for all the energies coming from the supernal triad of Keter, Chokhmah, and Binah. And so chesed is water. But when we think of water, we think of it's been affected by the moon, so it has all these ripples.
Yeah.
What we do is we want to meditate on clearing the ripples out and have a placid surface that mimics very much the kind of emotional regulative state that allows us to tap into the divinity that comes through chesed. Do you get it?
I understand it. Yes.
Yeah. Because if your frequency is crazy, you're not really paying attention to the beauty. So we're always trying to lessen the crazy. Hey man, I'll tell you something. The more I got involved with Kabbalah, the easier my dating life got because I started to get away from crazy. You know, I'm being real here. I'm 47 in my 30s. Like I was coming up, I was learning stuff, and it's easy to take these things that we learn and like have fun with them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you soon learn that when you have these opportunities to work with these energies, one has to practice responsibility, or else it's all for naught. And this world that we're here to experience is also here to give back to us what we put into it. So we soon learn that we strive for peace. We strive for the placid chesed. And to your question, age brings knowledge and wisdom, which allows us to value and achieve that state of placidity in an easier way.
Excellent. It's interesting because the Hebrew that I learned in some of the groups I'm in, we learn ancient Hebrew, so with no vowels. So we don't use the point system, right? The dots. So that's how like I pronounce stuff differently too as well, based on how we learned it. And then a ritual that we do for balance is actually the middle pillar ritual, where we say, from a Heye all the way down to Adonai Haaretz. There's 5 God names that we say on the middle of the pillar on the tree of life, and that's what we use in like high magic to balance ourselves within the middle pillar, because one pillar is black, one pillar is white, the middle pillar is supposed to be gray. supposed to be a blending of the two. So I just that came to me as soon as you said that, balancing the emotions. I'm like, oh yeah, we
Yeah.
do that with the middle pillar. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the supernal triads, one Chokhmah is, Chokhmah is black, Binah is gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and what's beautiful is that, it's a result of the combination of Heter and Chokhmah. You
Yeah.
know, and I've been
Yes.
thinking about what this supernal triad means. What it really is. What is it? And I have my eyes like this for a reason. Because imagine primordial existence coming up from mud, and all they are is just a bunch of eyes, and they see the world, and then they die. That's all that existence was. That's all that existence was a semblance of experience and then a death.
Hmm.
We have evolved our conscious selves from that place, and the amount of complexities that are encompassed in our everyday existence make it so that, like, we strive to find some kind of a system to find emotional regulation. Children, when we're born, we're all ego, so we are all in that top place where we're just there to receive. All we can do is receive.
Yeah.
But as we go along, we learn to lie and to, get what we want. And our development on choosing a more noble path comes from, connecting these four worlds, you know, because when we start to get these ideas, we start to parse out over time, am I going to connect and am I going to become a thief, or am I going to connect and become a contributing member to society? Both ways we're providing for our family, but how we do that middle pillar, connecting to the idea, the vibration of our goal, and the actual manifestation of it, that changes over time. The Kabbalistic tree of life that we're talking about here, they say something, it's called the lightning path. Lightning path goes bam, 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 bam.
Yep.
But here's the thing about lightning. Lightning cannot strike the same way twice. It will never strike the same way twice. That's why this moment, that moment just left. This moment, right? That moment just went. This moment, our ability to connect to happiness, to a higher vibration, is a choice that every single person makes. And Kabbalah teaches us that we have to reflect. We have to reflect on our day, but the thing is that we can't spend the whole day consciously reflecting and like second guessing everything that we did. We'd live in a state of anxiety, which is not what the Creator wants. The Creator wants us to have all of the joy that it can give us. Kabbalah literally means to receive. So now in that conscious state of being receptive, that choice is made easier through learning. But there are so many steps, like we keep going back. It's a very complex notion. Can I relay to you the one lesson that I learned that was really illustrative of what Kabbalah is or what it can do?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'll never forget, because like the teacher came in, he blew my mind. He goes, I walked outside my house today, and in my front yard, there was a tree. There's a tree in my front yard. When did the tree get there? I would have known that there was a tree in my front yard. My point is that the seed of that tree happened years ago. Where our conscious perspective was at that moment has led to the existence of this tree now in our yard. But we were not cognizant of our regulating our emotional states, or like that we can exist to benefit others. The idea of restriction. These are all Kabbalistic concepts. Until we become aware of these different aspects of Kabbalah that we can actually use to make our lives better, we end up waking up with these trees in our front yard that we're like, how did it get here? I didn't mean for this tree to happen. But when we have this conscious connection with the moment, all of a sudden we find that, we plant the trees that we want. And that's actually what led to your beautiful background, your beautiful room behind you, You planned that. You made that happen. And I always get excited when I see it because it reminds me that this is the world that you want to inhabit. You know, you want to let those symbols soak into us, into you,
Yeah.
you know? And that means that you've been going up to Atsiluth time and time again and just bringing down the inspiration through Berias. Like, how can I, you know, like, what does it look like? What do I want to learn? What do I want? What kind of discussions do I want to have? You're working with the four worlds every day, but unless you stop to realize it, you can actually, and over time, you can work with it and you can see where you are in any given situation and apply it to different parts of our life. But what's the next question? Because I think we can go on forever.
Yeah, no, we can. So, we're getting a little bit into the time here, so I'm gonna ask a couple more questions, right? And then I'll have you give some final remarks.
Yeah.
And then we'll definitely continue on an episode 2,
Would you like
probably in episode 3, probably episode 4, because there's just so much packed in here, and you know, to ask every one of these questions would probably take 3 to 4 hours, and on a maybe on a small scale of really explaining it, you know, and that's why it would be amazing for the conversation to continue in the future and bring you on again, because this is something I feel like it's important for people to learn and understand, you know, now that the 40-year-old thing is off the table.
I mean, think about it. I mean, like right now, we're recording, like, and it's going to go out like lickety split. So
Yeah.
the amount of information that's being distributed right now is
Yeah.
to the degree that we tune into what we want.
Yes.
So, like, am I going to keep clicking that button that's going to give me serotonin? And we're going to go say, no, I need to have time for conscious reflection. You know, it's a choice.
Yes. So, okay, you kind of some of these questions you already answered, which is amazing. So how can understanding these worlds help us navigate challenges in life, such as stress, uncertainty, or purpose seeking?
Purpose seeking. Well, okay. I want to start with purpose seeking
Okay.
because I think it's important because a lot of people fear not having a purpose. I personally feel like one of them, that it's like the purpose driven life is why people live and operate out of intentionality. If you're tuned in this far, that means you were intentionally learning about Kabbalah. That means that if you don't have a pad and a pen, that you're probably in the weeds and lost. So I recommend you start over again, and at every opportunity, grab a pad and a pen. Because when you do that, you start to realize what you want to write down and what you don't. And that you start to immediately start learning about who you are in relation to the knowledge that you seek and the purpose for which you're writing. You see, one of the main tenets in Kabbalah is being proactive. It's being proactive. That means not that if you tell me something and I feel it, if I react, am I really doing something elevated, or am I just taking it, thinking about it, and just saying thank you for it? Taking a pause. And no matter what it is that you told me, I now have an opportunity to just sit with it and just let it be. But if I immediately react, I've taken that moment and I've just threw it up in the dust, in the wind. There's nothing to learn from it. Let's take that same example, but I'm going to make it much more easy to understand. Let's say that there's something that you tell me and I'm affected negatively. You are one coil in a you are one filament in a light bulb. You are the action. Your action is you just told me something hurt your feelings, right? So I am receiving it on the other end. I am the other filament receiving your charge in a light bulb. I'm receiving it, and if I react, it explodes. No more light is to be gained from that moment. It is just sparked and gone. If you tell me some negative news and I get it and I receive it and I sit with it and I don't engage, the light that is created from that moment sits and it is illuminating. Okay? I did not react. And so there was no sudden explosion, light, and it's gone. Now we're back to darkness. No, we've sat and we've had a discussion, and from that recognizance and not reacting, I have thereby raised the vibration of that interaction. And so by that notion alone, the idea of using the four worlds allows us to immediately connect with other people in a higher way. Like in that interaction of our two filaments creating light as opposed to short circuiting, we have just raised that discussion from Asiya to a world of formation where we get to talk about our emotions, right? We get to work that EQ thing that we were talking about.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
you just maybe I'm really this. Well, maybe we could both get a little of this, and we find our EQ, Librium.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And but the thing is, you want to get even further?
Yeah.
How about you want to raise that Yetzirah to Beria? What if you say, you know what, man? We had these differences, but what if we work on something that we both love? We've raised the vibration, and it just goes on further. But it comes from a place of finding, once again, that idea from Purim that we talked about. I see the God spark in you. I see the God spark in you. I don't see the dude that I had problems with. I see the God spark in you. And if I have to get drunk to let down all my self-guard so I can just recognize the beauty of your light, so
Wow.
yeah, so how much time do we have left?
We have enough time for two more questions, then I will leave some closing remarks. So I'm going to go for the next question. So what is the ultimate goal of understanding and working with the four worlds?
What is the ultimate goal of working with the four worlds? First of all, it's to first of all, okay, why are we doing it? Because if you think about the four worlds, we've been talking about, listen to Maldo, we've been talking about the four worlds like it's some kind of lateral up and down thing, right? What shape is this planet? It's a big donut. That means that the periphery of this donut, that the worlds expand that way. So it's centrifugal. That means that, it's like it goes around and around and around. So we have different layers of this. It's not just an up and down thing. When we start to see it in this way, hold on, remind me of the question. There was a point.
It's okay.
Yeah.
What is the ultimate goal of understanding and working with the four worlds?
So when we think about the four worlds, we've been talking about this up and down kind of lateral idea, like the central pillar. The thing is that what is the shape of this particular world that we live on? It's a ball. And so when we think about the four worlds, we have to think about the way that an atmosphere surrounds the planet Earth. Okay? At its core, we have Asiya, right? But just above it, we have Beria. And just above that, we have, just above Yetzirah, we have Beria, and so on. And so at its core, we start to see how paradoxical this whole thing is. The whole point is that we're bringing things into this world from that far outside. It's like
Okay.
we're mining minerals from the moon and bringing them down to Earth. Except instead of the moon, it's the moon, Jupiter, Mercury, all these different planetary energies. And we're distilling them into this world. But when you start to understand things in that three-dimensional, four-dimensional, five-dimensional perspective, we start to understand the emotional and energetic underpinnings to Kabbalah. And then we start to go into Kabbalistic astrology. And that's where it just gets chef kiss like poetry. Because we start to see that our DNA in our fingertips is very much the same as the spiritual DNA of all the planets and other stars that go on forever in the universe.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, this give and take of what's the point of the four worlds? It's to bring in from that 99% invisible world into this 1%, the reality that we seek. And what is the reality that we seek? Once again, it depends on where you are in your development spiritually.
Yeah.
That's why I say don't learn until you're 40, because At 40, you have a family, you have things you value. When
Hmm.
you're 15, you value something different.
Yeah.
But now we're all confronted with all this information at the same time. Our goal right now is to bring in peace. Our goal is to bring in unity. Our goal is to bring the vibrations of love into this asiyah. That's what our role is. That's what this whole thing is here to do. But when you take a look at I'm gonna go into history for a second, if you don't mind. The first crusade that ever happened in Europe was called the Albigensian Crusade, because the people that the Catholic Church were fighting against were mostly from the city of Albi in France. Okay, the Albigensian Crusade was against a sect called the Cathars. The Cathars was a religious group that, at its core, believed that their connection to divinity did not require an intermediary such as the church, but they also had, as one of their main tenets, the idea that the earth is a place of negativity. That's being generous, okay? That the earth is the source of all negativity. So all of a sudden, we have this duality that exists. And so we take this and we combine it with the Kabbalistic worldview that we're bringing, the four worlds into this kind of world from the 99 into this 1%. We understand that this 1% can be a little negative. And so we have to counteract that with love. But in the course of being humans, we let this thing, they say that according to Trismegistus, the whole world, the whole universe is mental. It's one mind. So we don't really learn what a pure mind is until later on in life, because we're consumed by prurient thoughts. So now we're confronted with at an even younger age to make choices between prurient thoughts and more, elevated concepts. Our job now is to just keep it pure and keep it full of love and bring unity into this consciousness using the system of the four worlds. This helps us do that easier.
Amazing. Good explanation. So coming down to the end of the time here now, final remarks, or you could recommend, some for beginners where they could start learning about Kabbalah. But the floor is yours for final remarks, brother.
Thank you. I had a blast, and this was so good because this is like just hanging out and talking with you anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so thankful. So just first, thank you. And if we have subsequent discussions to this, I welcome them absolutely. But where does one get started with Kabbalah? A book. I would say you can go to the internet, but the truth is that since I was born into a Rosicrucian household, a spiritual household, I would actually honestly recommend checking out mystery schools. I personally, learned from a book. A book can be a bit dry. People turn to YouTube. I would say keep it simple. The KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, means that just be part of a group. Like I learned from the Kabbalah Center in New York, and it's international. And from there, I learned that there are other different international Kabbalistic bodies. And they have podcasts, and I actively sought them out. And then over time, I learned that some of them were multilingual. So I ended up listening to all these podcasts that were instantly translating Hebrew into English and all these different languages. And so I found that the fluidity of language just became so easy. So I would highly recommend that you actively seek out podcasts regarding Kabbalah with a K. With a K. Now, past that, when it comes to books, I would say that anything from the Kabbalah Center is great. But I like this particular book. This is by Gershom Scholem. This is an old book. It was a hand-me-down. And but it's super dense. It even smells like an old book, because the reason why I'm saying you have to start
Yeah.
something is because this right here is the Zohar.
Yeah. No.
This is a 23-tome amalgamation of spiritual texts. And they've been referenced for so many years. And I mean, just diving into one of these is like going into the deep end of a surf pool. You're gonna be thrown
Yeah.
around. So that's why just simply attending something like the Kabbalah Center, or even checking out. I belong to a group called the Builders of the Addendum, and they tie a lot of Kabbalah in with tarot, and that connection is so special.
Yes.
But remember, if you're learning about Kabbalah with a K, you're immediately going to start learning about Kabbalah with a Q.
Yep.
And if you don't understand to distinguish the systems, you might get some of your crosses, your
Yes.
messages mixed.
No, I
So
know. I get it. I understand that. It can't happen. So it's that's why it's always specifying which one you're learning. And sometimes different groups learn a different one. So if you want, thank you for explaining that.
I just realized something. I didn't recommend my own group. My name is Roland Ramos, but I started a group called Rolling Rainbows. And
Okay.
yeah, Rolling Rainbows is basically a Patreon that I started where we talk about using the planetary energies of every day. That means red for Mercury. That means blue for Chesed. So we start to see the planetary, the color, the daily energies, and how they work with the Kabbalistic tree of life. And it happens every day. And on top of that, personally, I work with something called the 72 Names of God, which is coming way down the line in your line of questioning. But that 72 Names of God that I work with personally in the Rolling Rainbow system is super effective. And that way you learn Hebrew, you learn the names, the names have been said for so many years, and the planetary energies that correspond. And the beauty is colors are my specialty. One of the things that led me to where I am, and I'm sorry I've taken up too much time, was I spent about 15 years as a curator. That means an arts curator. I would organize exhibitions and art festivals and fairs. And so my relationship with art is one that is so important to me. The idea of colors as a useful modality for emotional regulation
Hmm.
is specifically in Rolling Rainbows tied to Kabbalistic sense, to planetary energies, to all these things that we confront every day, but we sometimes don't know how to turn it into some kind of a synthetic, process that we can work with every day. And I've been working with this, and I've started developing a little following. And right now, just being here with you allows me to talk about it, which is the whole goal of starting it. So thank you.
No problem. Yeah. So I will definitely once I edit it and upload it, I'll ask you for that link. I'll put the link in the bio for today's podcast. And thank you for coming on the show. I would love to get you on here for part 2, 3, and maybe 4, right? And so we could keep diving deep into this, keep helping people to learn about Kabbalah and what it is, and which path or which school maybe might be right for them based on what we undercover and discover. So thank you. I'm so grateful for having you on this podcast. And peace profound, brother.
Peace profound. Thank you so much. Have a great, wonderful day.
You too.